Hello folks, I'm Trev Makes It Easy, the channel where we make learning easy. In this series, Trev on Econ, I'll be taking you through topics you're likely to run into in any introductory course in economics at the college or university level. My goal is to make economics less scary, more approachable, and, if I can, mildly enjoyable. With that being said, let's make it easy. All right, folks, let's get started. So, we're going to tackle the next model now, which is codenamed PPF. Now you'll notice here I have it as part 1. This is going to be our first lesson where we probably shouldn't be doing it in one fall swoop. We need to do it in 2 parts just to make it a little more bite-sized. I encourage you to watch both parts so you get the complete picture, but just be aware this is one of the more in-depth pieces. All right. So the PPF is another model that we're going to be working with. And the PPF stands for Production Possibilities Frontier, right? You might see it sometimes called the PPC for Production Possibility Curve, but PPF seems to be the one that is most often used. And this PPF isn't really going to make sense if I just define it right now. So instead of defining it, we're going to actually work our way up to what it's supposed to look like, and that will give us a much better sense of what it is we're trying to do with it. All right. Now, again, the name kind of gives it away, but it uses some complex language that I don't love. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with kind of a thought experiment. We're going to make a little chart here. And we are going to pretend, you and I, to be a company. And our company is going to sell, what's something easy? Apples and oranges. Right? We're farmers of some sort. And on our farm, we grow these 2 fruits. We're going to keep it to 2. We could add more, but again, we want to keep it simple. All right? So we could add more stuff. It's just going to make the math harder later, and it's going to make the picture even worse. Keep it at this level for now. This will suffice for most intro economics courses. So, you and I grow apples and oranges, but we only have so many workers, so much field space, so many resources, etc. We have to decide how we're going to make these. All right. Now, we can make different combinations of these 2 things. One thing we could do is we could say, you know what, apples are the new hotness. We're going to make 100 apples. We're going to put everything we have into apples, and if I dedicate all my resources to apples, I can make 100 of them. Ignore the numbers. They're completely made up to make my life easy. But if I'm using everything on apples, that necessarily means that for oranges, I just don't get any. All right. This is a very extreme case where I have the option to make both, and I'm just saying I don't care about one of them. Make all of the apples. Totally valid, though. This is something you can do. Now, if we switch gears and do the opposite, maybe oranges are popular. Maybe, I don't know, we need vitamin C. If I make oranges, I can dedicate all my resources to oranges and get, let's say, 200 of them. But we end up with the opposite problem, which is if I make 200 oranges, then for apples, I don't get any. So right away, these are 2 possible combinations. Oh, look, possible. That's one of the words in the name. All right. These are 2 possible combinations. Now, possible does not mean best. It just means you can do it. All right. There's not many companies that I can think of where they offer 2 products and they just refuse to make one of them. There's probably times where that happens, but it's an odd choice. So instead, maybe we say, okay, we're making 100 apples, no oranges. What if I just cut this down a little? What if I just make 80 apples? If I make 80 apples, that basically is going to free up some of my resources. Some land becomes available, some workers become available, and I'm going to be able to make some oranges now. I'm picking numbers again that are going to make the math easier for us. This is another possible combination of production, right? Production possibility. The name starts to make sense. Notice here, though, that we're actually highlighting an economic concept we talked about in an earlier video, right? The idea of trade-offs. When oranges go up, if I get more oranges, there has to be a cost. What's that cost? Less apples, right? If I think about it the other way and go from 80 to 100 apples, that's more apples, but guess what? I lose those oranges. Now, we're going to just continue this trend. So I've got 60, and then this is, 80. Then I've got 40, and this becomes 120. And then I go to 20, and I get 160. All right. I've made this nice and simple. These are going down by 20. These are going up by 40. It's just keeping the same relationship. But effectively what I've done is I've come up with 6 different production possibilities. These are 6 potential options we have. Now, right now we're looking at raw data. Raw data is fine, but it can be difficult to tell what's going on with raw data, especially if we add more rows, more columns, whatever the case may be. So a lot of the time, it helps us to visualize by transforming data into graphs. And this is why economics is so graph heavy, because raw data is ugly. Graphs are ugly too, but they're mildly less ugly, and they're easier to tell stories from. So let's graph these points. So quick refresher, and for most of our level of economics, we're going to be operating on an X and Y coordinate system, right? And first thing we have to do is we have to label our axes. So one axis will be oranges, and one axis will be apples. Now, for our purposes, it doesn't matter which one goes where. You could have put oranges on the other one and apples on the bottom one. It doesn't matter. Most of the time it will matter, though. We'll make note of that when that comes up. But for this chapter or this section, it's not a big deal. So let's go try and mark some of these out. I'm going to do this very roughly. 20, 40, 80, and then same thing down here. Again, this is going to be a rough graph, but hey, we're not really going to be doing many precise graphs. Okay, so just quickly, we've got 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. We got 40, 80, 120, 160, 200. Okay, gave too many dots, that's okay. But what I can do now is plot the ordered pairs. So one of the points is 100 apples, 0 oranges. So 100 apples is right here, 0 oranges is right here, so we get a dot approximately there. Then we could graph 80 and 40, 60 and 80, 40 and 120, 60 and 20, or 160 and 20, and then 200 and 0, right? Those are the 6 dots that match the 6 points we've created, the 6 possibilities we came up with. Now, what happens here is that we ask ourselves, well, are these it? What if I want 90 apples? What if I want, 13 oranges? There's a lot more production possibilities in between the dots we've come up with. We basically have dots here and 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 here. But the idea is, if I draw every possibility, I'm going to get a line that goes through everything. I'm going to clean this up a bit because I can't draw straight, but I'm going to get a line that basically maps out every possible level of production. And if you think about what we name this, this is our PPF. And we can now really decide what that means. The PPF basically is this. It shows all possible combinations of production we can make given a set amount of resources, right? Remember, resources are basically our big limiting factor. They're the things that are going to cause scarcity. So there is a limit to how much I can make. I might want to make 10 million apples, but it doesn't look like 10 million is possible. We will get to that. But here is our very simple picture, and it just says anything along this line we can make with the resources we have. Simple. The next thing we have to do is talk about the different areas on this graph. Effectively, there's 3 different areas. There is anything inside the graph. Let's call this, let's say this point here, we're going to call this A. That is one type of point, anything under the line. We also have things on the line. I'm going to pick here, let's say this is B, but I'm also going to add another one, C, that's down here. And then finally, outside, we have D. That was a terrible D. There we go. Our goal is to be able to describe what is happening in these 3 areas. So describe what happens below the graph, what it means if I'm on the graph, and what does it mean if I'm above the graph. All right. Now, before we do that, we need some definitions. The definitions we're going to talk about first are fairly simple. They are the word possible, meaning do we have the resources to produce at this point? Basically saying, given what I know I have, just do I have enough? The next one is it efficient? And efficient just means, are we using all our resources to produce at this point? And we want to be using all our resources because I don't want things sitting idly by, right? If I have a bunch of land, I don't want several acres of it to just be barren. If I have lots of workers, I don't want people just sitting around doing nothing. To be efficient means let's make sure everything is working as it should. Now, let's go through each one by one. The first one is point A. Okay. Point A is representative of anything below the PPF. Okay. So anything in this sort of triangle area here, that is point A, is representative of it. And we're going to do the same exercise for all these points, and you can try to beat me to it, but we need to ask ourselves, is something like point A possible? And is something like point A efficient? So point A is possible, right? It is possible because if I know I can produce up into the blue line, right, then A is definitely possible. If I'm only trying to make 20 apples and, 80 oranges, well, I already know here that I could make 60 apples and 80 oranges. So if I can make 60 and 80, of course I can make 20 and 80. That's completely fine. It's possible. But it is not efficient. And the reason is the same argument I just made. Yes, I can do it, but I could do more. All right. Yes, A is at 20 and 80, but I could do 60 and 80. I could do 20 and 160. I could do a whole bunch more. And basically, I would be able to move closer to this blue line. Now, some people say, well, what if I only want 20 apples and 80 oranges? Why not just make what I want? The reason is, you should always make as much as you can, even if you don't need it. Why? You can trade the rest to other people, right? Perhaps you don't need, 60 apples, 80 oranges. Maybe you only need 20 apples. Well, that extra 40 apples you could trade with a neighboring town or just another person in your city, right? And then access more resources. You want to turn your resources into production. That is one of the kind of base concepts of this whole thing. Next up, we have B and C. Now, there's a reason I put 2 points here, all right? So point B and C. This is anything on the PPF. Okay, so you'll notice B and C are both on the line itself. And again, we ask ourselves the same 2 questions. Is it possible? Is it efficient? Well, it is possible because, again, we can go up and onto the line. That's totally fine. And it is efficient because we know that line shows us the possible combinations using all our resources. So if I'm using all my resources on that blue line, then that means B and C are using all those resources. And by our definition of efficiency, it is being efficient, right? Now's the tricky part, or at least something you should watch out for on tests, all right? A common question is, which is better, B or C? And here's where we get some interesting findings. The interesting finding is all points on the PPF are equally good, we're going to say. I'm going to put good in quotes because I don't love the word good in economics. But they're equally fine. They're equally preferable, we sometimes say. Unless, all right, they give us a little more information. If they tell us the preferences, we know which one is better. All right. So what do I mean by this? Well, right now in this economy, there's apples and oranges. I know nothing else about this economy. So if someone asks me what's better, B or C, my answer is they're both fine. They're both equally good. I can't choose. When that changes is as I get more information, I can refine my answer. So what we run into is maybe this economy really likes apples. Okay, that's their preference. Their preference is apples. All right. So what do we need to do? Well, now that we know they prefer apples, I can look at B and C and basically say, well, which one gives them more apples? C looks to be giving them about 20. B looks to be giving about 80. So B is giving more apples. So I would say B is now the better point. All right. So we want to give them more of the thing they prefer and less of the thing they don't prefer. So if they liked oranges more, we would go to C because C has more oranges than B. Again, you have to be careful, and one of the key things people will struggle with is reading the questions carefully. A lot of times in economics, one word makes a huge difference, and if you're just scanning questions, you can definitely miss some key details. The last thing we have to do is point D. And if you've kind of figured out the pattern here or the system, you can probably guess what I'm going to say about point D. So point D, this is anything above the PPF. And you can kind of answer the questions right away. Is D possible? It's not possible, right? Given our level of resources, but it can become possible. All right. It's not possible right now. Right now, we are limited to that blue line. That is our frontier or our border. Anything below the border or to the border is fine, but we cannot go past that border just yet. So as of right now, D is not possible. So we don't have to worry about efficiency. It's not possible. I would like to get to D if I could. If I could get to D, that'd be great because it's more stuff and more stuff is better. However, right now, not possible. So not even a question of efficiency. That's where we're going to call it today. We're going to leave part 2 to wrap up some of this and then come back to this point D and answer when does it become possible. But this is definitely a model you're going to see, especially in the early parts of economics courses. And I highly recommend you get comfortable with the different areas and what they imply. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Well, folks, that wraps up another lesson for today. I hope it was helpful. If you found the video valuable, please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about the content or requests for other topics or subjects you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment below. Until next time, keep learning and make it easy.